Today we're taking a look at the Realme X7 Pro, a smartphone that is priced at 30,000 INR in the Indian market, has a flagship MediaTek 1000 plus processor along with a super nice 120Hz Super AMOLED display, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, and a lot of other cool features under this price segment. And on paper, this sounds like a really good phone for the price that it's out there, but is it really worth it when you take things off paper into real world performance? What's up guys, Anubhav here, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we'll be talking about this phone, whether you should buy it, whether you should not buy it, and what are the reasons that you should consider if you're looking at buying the Realme X7 Pro in 2021. With that said, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Without any further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, now let's talk design. This is the back panel, as you guys can see. Now the color that I have is this fantasy color variant, and while I do appreciate the matte finish and the colors that are in here, I'm not really a huge fan of this huge Dare to Leap branding on the side. It is also a pretty bad fingerprint magnet, as you guys can see. However, if you guys don't like this branding, just like you can go for the Mystic Black variant, which does not have the branding. But overall, I like this color better. Just hoped it would have come without the branding. That would have done it. Moving on from that, let's turn over and let's look at the display instead. Now this is, as you guys can see, a 120Hz Super AMOLED panel, meaning you get this beautiful 120Hz display, and honestly this display is great. There are no problems. It's AMOLED, the blacks are deep. Content consumption on this is really great, and the 120Hz that is in there that you guys will see if I go over to display settings and show you guys, this is actually a constant 120Hz, so there's no adaptive 120Hz. It works all the time at a constant 120 Hz, which could be bad for the battery, but I really love high refresh rates, and honestly you can see the display side of things is top notch. Alright, moving on from that, let's talk about software. Now this is obviously running Realme UI, by the way, which I'm not a huge fan of. There's a lot of pre-installed bloatware that you will have to uninstall, as you guys can see, and honestly I don't like phones that have a lot of bloatware, especially bloatware that is completely unnecessary and stuff that I will never ever use. I do understand you need a little bit of that for the app revenue as well as stuff, for putting out budget phones. But either way, as far as about the phone is concerned, it's still running on Android version 10, as you can see, which is slightly disappointing considering the fact that Android 12 developer previews are already out. However, I did read an article where it said that Realme X7 Pro users will get the Android 11 update probably in the second quarter of 2021. But just a couple of things to keep in mind, that it does not have Android 11 right out of the box. Moving on from that, let's talk about the performance. Now, here's the thing. There's a lot of buzz about, the Dimensity 1000 Plus processor and how it performs and stacks up against the Snapdragon counterparts. But I'm going to make this really simple for all of you people considering this phone right now. This is actually a really good processor. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. You weren't expecting it. But in case you guys don't know, we've already done a speed test comparing this phone with the OnePlus 8. Now, for comparison, the OnePlus 8 has a Snapdragon 865 processor. And honestly, even though these phones are not even in the same segment, the very fact that it catches up to the 865 and performs even better when it comes to a few applications, card above if you want to check the video out, proves that this is actually a good processor and not some Chinese MediaTek crap that Realme is trying to sell you. The processor is great, the performance is great, all games, all apps run very smoothly. There's very little to no lag when it comes to switching between applications, and honestly, all I can say that this is a very good phone when you're considering it for performance or gaming or anything of that sort. Now, the question still lies whether this will be as good as Snapdragon after you've used this phone for a while, because right now, of course, it's a new phone. Everything is supposed to be snappy out of the box, and if you ask me, I'm gonna take the safe side here and still bet that Snapdragon would, perform better in the long term. But again, I'd love to be wrong if Realme proves to us that the MediaTek Dimensity processor still holds up its power after, let's say, a year or two of usage. I would love to be that guy who's wrong when it comes to saying that Snapdragon wins, because I'm really excited for this processor. This is actually a really good processor. Super good props to Realme for that. Alright, now let's talk about something that I always talk about when it comes to smartphones and phones that I review, and that is them cameras. Now, once again, this phone has advertised itself to be a 64 megapixel quad camera setup, as you guys can see. But right out of the bat, two of these sensors from the quad camera setup, one of them is a 2 megapixel macro, the other is a 2 megapixel depth. So both of these are complete BS. So let's just throw them in the trash and we'll talk about the actual two cameras. Now, one of them is the standard sensor. It's a 64 megapixel sensor. The other one is an 8 megapixel ultra wide. And here's the deal. Photos from this camera are actually really good when you give it enough light. And by enough light, I mean a lot of light. Now, the samples are on the screen right now. And as you guys can see, some of the photos in broad daylight and conditions where the sun is right up and everything is lit up, especially outdoors, are good. When you start zooming in, of course, you start losing a lot of detail, especially from the ultra wide, because it's just an 8 megapixel sensor. The 64 megapixel sensor, when you shoot photos from the 64 megapixel mode, are good enough, but not that great. I'm not gonna call this phone a camera king by any standard. However, when you come to relatively low light scenarios, and stress on relatively here. By relatively, I do not mean night mode or completely low light scenarios. The photos already start struggling a lot. There's a lot of noise. When you zoom in, you can see patches of pixels. It becomes very clunky, and I would not recommend it to anyone if you're looking for a camera-centric phone under this budget. Even the front camera is a 32 megapixel sensor, and I would not recommend it because even after turning all of that AI beauty mode, everything that Realme packs into its beauty selfies, even after you turn all of them off, the samples are in front of the screen right now. There's a lot of beauty mode and skin softening happening to the point where there is no detail left in your photos. So as a practicing photographer and a film student and a person who really likes using good smartphone cameras, this is definitely not a camera king by any standard. If you want basic pictures and cameras are not really that important for you, you can definitely go for this phone. And given the fact that it's running a MediaTek Dimensity processor, meaning it's going to be really hard for you to come up with really good, reliable, fully working Gcam mods for this. So yes, there's not going to be any Realme X7 Pro plus Gcam equals to magic on these cameras. That is not happening. So yeah, take your call if you're looking for a phone with a good camera. Alright, now let's talk about a few miscellaneous things here and there. First off, the fingerprint sensor. The fingerprint sensor is actually really fast. Some of the times it does miss the sensor some of the times, but when it does work, it unlocks instantly. There's even face unlock on this phone, and it works very, very well right out of the box. Super seamless. A couple of things that I wish this phone had, and things that I think are cons, even though they are not that big of a con, are number one, there's no 3.5mm headphone jack. As you guys can see at the bottom, all you get is the speaker, the SIM tray, and the charging port on the top. You've again got a secondary microphone, and that's pretty much it. There's no 3.5mm headphone jack. Number two, there's no expandable storage. Now I know that expandable storage has slowly been phased out of phones, but in mid-range budget segment phones such as this phone, which claims to be a flagship, there should at least be an option. And even though it is not as important for me than it was a couple of years ago, I still know people, a lot of friends who carry literally a lot of data on their phones. So if you want expandable storage, this is not the phone for you. And last but not least, number three, the storage speed. So this still has UFS storage 2.1. 3.0 or 3.1 would have been good to see, considering the fact that the phone is being advertised as a flagship. However, you don't get to see that here as well. So yeah, here's just a few list of cons that I thought you guys should know before you take a decision about buying this phone and whether you should buy it or not in the first place. As far as the battery life is concerned, the battery life is actually really good. It packs a 4500 mAh battery, and it also comes with a massive 65 watt charging brick in the box. So I guess that is a really, really good big plus when it comes to battery life in general. When it comes to video on this phone, the phone can shoot up to 4K 60 FPS. However, there's a catch. You can't really shoot in 60 FPS unless you're shooting from the main sensor. So no ultra wide video at 60 FPS. This seems really dumb, because having an ultra wide camera means that you get that super wide, nice ultra wide video. The same is true for 1080p. You cannot shoot 1080p 60 FPS with the ultra wide sensor, and the ultra wide sensor has EIS, so there's no optical image stabilization on any of the lenses. So yeah, videos are very average, and with this limitation, it just makes it all the more less appealing to a camera centric person such as me. But yeah, just to keep in mind before you get this phone. Alright, so verdict time. Here's the deal. The Realme X7 Pro is actually a really good phone. It's got a gorgeous display, 120Hz refresh rate, a pretty close flagship processor that actually is really good, and I was super impressed with it. And yeah, it's a good phone, but it is for a specific set of people. If you're anyone who wants a 3.5mm headphone jack, or expandable storage, or even inbuilt fast storage, or a camera, a good camera on a phone, I would not recommend this phone to you. However, if you're looking for a phone that can do very good performance at this price, under 30k, you don't want any lags when it comes to PUBG or Call of Duty, and you wanted to use it for gaming, you also want an AMOLED 120Hz high refresh rate panel, and cameras are not really that important to you, with actually really good battery life and a massive 65-watt charger, which is included in the box, I think this is the phone to go for. And yeah, that is pretty much it for today's video. If you guys did like it, feel free to drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Without any further ado, this is Anubhav signing out. I will catch you guys next time. You guys have a great day. Stay safe. Peace out.